In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make the Nova cardigan. This video is a step-by-step video designed to go alongside the written pattern. You can find that on my blog. I will leave a link in the description box below for you. There are also premium PDFs that you can purchase as well. In the pattern, you'll find written instructions for sizes extra small right through to 5X. I'm actually going to be doing a pattern which is slightly smaller than any of those for the adult size. I'm going to be doing a children's size, but all of the same principles for this apply to the pattern itself. You'll just need to check on the pattern to see how many stitches you need to do for each size. So for this pattern, I am using this huge 400-gram ball of Hayfield's Bonus Aran Tweed. You can obviously substitute for an Aran weight yarn. You will just need to do your gauge swatch to make sure that your cardigan comes out in the correct sizing. You are going to need a 4.5mm crochet hook and a 5mm crochet hook. We're going to be using one for the ribbing and then one for the main cardigan itself. You will need a pair of scissors and a darning needle for sewing in your ends, and then you will also need 4 stitch markers. So go ahead, check the pattern, see how much yarn you need for your specific size, gather your supplies, and let's get started. So before we get started on the swatch, I just want to talk briefly about the construction of this cardigan. It's actually made in one whole piece. We're going to be working the whole of the body, that's the front and the back, from side to side. So it's going to be made in one long, thinner piece, which we're going to fold and create the front and the back. So essentially when we're working it this way round. So we'll start from the side, work all the way across, make allowances or make a gap for the neck, and then work all the way across the other side. So when we do our initial chain, that is going to be the length for the front and the back. So it's going to be a really long chain. We're then going to add the arms in a flat piece on each side, and then the seaming is only going to be required for the side here and then under the arm, and the same on the other side. We're then going to add the ribbing to the bottom and then around the neck opening. The ribbing on the arms is going to be done while we're actually working the arms. And then we're going to add the pockets. So if you want to save a bit of time, you can actually make one of your pockets as your gauge swatch. So I would recommend that you go and take a look at the pattern and see the sizing of the pocket you need for your selected size, because then you can make use of that for your cardigan. So let's go ahead and make our swatch. So for your swatch, you're going to be using your larger hook, which is the 5mm crochet hook. And we're going to go ahead and make our slip knots in whichever method you prefer, and go ahead and insert your crochet hook. So as I say, you can take a look at the pattern for the pocket and select the size that you are doing for your particular project. I'm just going to do the smallest size, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 24. That's yarn over, pull through, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 and 24. We're going to go ahead and we're going to be working in the back bumps of the chain, so not the front, not the top or bottom loops. We're going to be working into this back bump, so if you turn it to the side we can see these here. And we're going to be working a treble crochet. So I'm working in UK terms. In the US, this is known as a double crochet. So I'll find our third chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, but then go ahead and locate the back bump of that chain. So yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over, pull through. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, you'll have 2 loops on the hook, and then yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. You're going to work 1 treble crochet, which is US double crochet, in each stitch all the way across. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So we'll work in each of the back bumps across that chain. Go ahead, pause the video, work across that chain, and then meet me back once you're ready. So once you've worked your way across, you should now have 1 stitch less than your original chain. The missed chains do count as a stitch. So just double check you have the right amount of stitches, and then we can move on to row 2. So we're going to go ahead and turn the work, and we're going to do what's called a stacked double crochet, which is a stacked single crochet in US terms. We're just going to lift the loop up just a small amount so that we can go into that first stitch, yarn over and pull through. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. We're then going to stack another double crochet or US single crochet on top of this stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into this bar of the stitch. So we have 2 bars here. It's this one just here. Yarn over, pull through. You'll have 2 loops on your hook, and yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. This just makes a much neater stitch than chaining. So that is what we're going to be working our first stitch like throughout the whole of our project. So once you've done this, this is our first stitch, and you're going to go ahead and do another treble crochet, which is US double crochet, into the next stitch and all the way across. So again, making sure that you have the right amount of stitches. You'll have the same amount of stitches as the previous row. Work all the way across, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now we're going to be repeating row 2. So we're going to turn our work and then start off with that stacked double crochet, which is stacked single crochet in US terms. Insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook, and then insert into that bar at the front, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. We're then going to work 1 treble crochet, which is US double crochet, into each stitch all the way across. Now you're going to repeat that row for the amount of times that it indicates in the pattern. For extra small to medium, you're going to do 12 rows, and for large, right up to 5x, you're going to do 14 rows. So go ahead, pause the video, work those 12 or 14 rows. It obviously will be different if you're doing children's sizes, but work your rows and then meet me back once you're ready. Okay, so here we have our gauge swatch, and now it's time to take your measurements to make sure that it fit the gauge for this pattern. So we're going to be measuring over 4 inches, which is 10 centimeters. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you are including the gaps in between your work. So say, for example, we're starting it at the front of the gap here, and the 4 inches should finish at the end of the gap, just here. And we should have 13 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So if you have too many stitches here, then your tension is quite tight and you want to go up half a hook size or a full hook size to account for that. If you don't have enough stitches, then your tension may be too loose, so you want to go down half a hook size or a full hook size. I have a video that talks all about gauge, so I'll make sure that I leave that here if you need to go and check that out. We also want to measure the rows. So when you're measuring a row, just remember the top of the stitch just falls, it's not down at the bottom here, it's actually just here. So you can see it in between. So it starts just here and then the base is just here. So we should have 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So again, make sure you make your adjustments if needed, especially if you are substituting your yarn, because that will make a difference on the overall finish and size of your cardigan. So you can go ahead and leave this for now, and we'll come back to it when we come to do the pockets. You can either lift up your loop and leave it attached to one of your balls, or you can fasten off and then we'll reattach later. But let's go ahead and get started on the body of the cardigan. So for the main body of the cardigan, you're going to be using your larger hook. For me, that's my 5mm hook. And we're essentially going to be doing the same as your swatch. We're just going to be making one long thin piece to begin with. So you're going to need to refer to the pattern for your sizing, but basically for the extra small and the small, you'll be starting off with a chain of 183. For the medium and the large, it will be 197. For the extra large and the 2x, you will be doing 209, and then for the 3x to 5x, you'll be doing 217. As I say, I'm doing a children's version, so mine is slightly smaller than all of those, but the concept is exactly the same. So you want to go ahead and make your first piece, and you want to be doing the amount of rows that you need for each size. I will leave it on the screen just here so that you can easily see that first section. And then once you have done those rows, I'm going to show you how you're going to split for the neck. So go ahead, pause the video, work your amount of stitches and your rows that are needed, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now that you have finished your first part, so this is going to be the one side of the front of your cardigan, we're now going to create a gap in the middle of the work for your neckline. So this is the neckline split. And when we do this, we are going to just be working half of the work and leaving the rest of it unworked. So I've popped a stitch marker right in the very central space because we have an even number of stitches, which is going to be the back and the front. I've popped my stitch marker in the central stitch. You can count if you want to. I just find that counting beforehand makes this easier and working up to our stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my work my very first stacked double crochet, which is stacked single crochet in the US, and then work 1 treble crochet US double crochet into each stitch all the way across up to my stitch marker. Of course, double checking the amount of stitches that I have up to the stitch marker to make sure that it's the amount required for my particular size. So go ahead and do the same up to your stitch marker and count your stitches, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now that you've worked your way up to where your stitch marker is, because this is in the center, you will be working right up to this stitch. We're now going to turn our work and leave those other stitches unworked. So this now becomes the back of the cardigan, and then this is the front of the cardigan, and this will become more apparent as we add a few more rows. So we're going to start off with our stacked double crochet, which is stacked single crochet, and then treble crochet, which is US double crochet, all the way across. You will have the same amount of stitches as your last row, and you will keep working your rows until you have 7 short rows. So the row counts will be different obviously for each size, and that's written in the pattern, but the short rows for each size you're going to have 7 rows. Unless you're working the children's size, that will be different as well. So we're going to go ahead and work those rows, and then meet me back once you're ready, because after that we're going to start building the work back up to do the full rows again. So now that you've worked your neckline split, it should look like this. I have only 5 rows because this is the child size. You will have more for your adult size if that's what you're making. We're going to go ahead and start setting up for the main body part 2. So for this, we actually need to get back to the same amount of stitches that we had for the first part. So we're going to be creating a chain so that we're back up to the same amount of stitches. So you will end up with the same amount of stitches across the chain that you have done on this side. However, we do need to think about the turning chain. So for example, if you have 91 stitches on your short row, you're actually going to chain 92, so it's just one extra. So you can turn your work to do this if you wish. I like to just turn it so that I can work straight off my chain. And you're going to yarn over, pull through, so it's straight off this stitch. That's the first chain. You can mark it if you wish, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Go ahead, pause the video, work your chain, and then meet me back once you're ready. So here's what your work is looking like now. This is part 1. This is the neckline split, and then this is the setup for the next row. For this, we're going to go ahead and work a treble crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, but we're working into the back loop only. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's a treble crochet, US double crochet. These missed chains do count as a stitch. And then you want to work 1 treble crochet, which is US double crochet, into each chain all the way until you get back to your neckline split. So go ahead, pause the video, work until you get to your neckline split. I have this way, but this is actually the way that will reach that section. So go ahead, pause the video, and then meet me back once you're at this section. So now you've worked your stitches on your chain, you want to ensure that you're counting your stitches to make sure that you have the same amount as you had for your short rows. And then we're going to go ahead and finish off this row by working 1 treble crochet into each stitch into those remaining stitches. So you'll be working into what was the short rows now to complete the full row. So go ahead and work all the way across and then meet me back once you're ready. Okay, so you've now worked all the way across and you've created your first row of the second side of the body. So now what you're going to do is you're going to build this same size, so you'll have the same amount of rows on this side. Just be sure that you are checking from where this gap is so that you're not confusing the short rows. So you want to pause the video. This will take some time to build those rows, but once you have done those rows, you have the main body complete and we're ready to do the arms. So pause the video and then I shall meet you shortly. So this is what your work should be looking like now. You have your neck opening here and then we have the back, which is a full panel. And once you've done your final row of part 2 of the body, you can go ahead and fasten off your yarn. And now we're going to move on to doing the sleeves. Now I've marked my central stitch here just because it makes it a little bit easier for you, because what we're going to do is we're going to add our sleeves straight onto this panel, and obviously when you turn it around you can do it onto this panel as well. One thing I will just note, that is because this is the last row that I've just done, just to keep a bit of consistency, I'm going to turn the work so that my first row of the sleeve is in the opposite direction of where we've just worked. So here is my central space, and then you're going to use the pattern to count stitches out each way. So for example, the extra small, you will count 25 stitches this way and mark the stitch, and 25 stitches this way and mark the stitch. Mine's going to be slightly smaller because I am doing the child version. So I'm going to count 22 stitches out. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I'm going to mark that 22nd stitch and then also do the same the opposite way. And then I can remove the central one. So this first stitch marker is our first stitch, and this last stitch marker is our last stitch. Because I've counted 22 each side, my arms are going to be 44 stitches. So let's go ahead and join for the sleeve. So I'm just making my slip knot on my hook. And then what I'm going to do is just pull this to one side and start off by working a standing double crochet into that first stitch. Just remove the stitch marker. So that's a standing double crochet, which is a standing single crochet, and then we're going to do a stacked double crochet, which is a stacked single crochet in US terms. And we're just going to continue as we have been by working 1 treble crochet US double crochet into each stitch all the way across. So we're going to, so you want to pause the video and work your way across, placing your last stitch into this marked stitch, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now we have completed that very first row of your sleeve, and it's just a case of working 28 rows in total. So in the pattern, there is 28 rows for each of the sizes other than children's sizes, but you can of course adapt this to however long or short you want your sleeves to be. We are going to be adding ribbing onto the end of the sleeve, so you just have to bear that in mind. So if you see here, we have a good couple of inches of ribbing on the end. So if you are adapting your sleeve size, make sure you bear that in mind. But you're simply going to repeat that those rows until you have 28 rows on the sleeve. As I say, for child size, it's going to be slightly different, so just make sure you double check the pattern. But go ahead, pause the video, work one sleeve, and then I'll meet you back and show you how to continue to do the ribbing. And I'll meet you back to show you how you're going to continue to do the cuff ribbing. So now that you've worked all your rows of your sleeve, we're now going to move on to the final row of the sleeve. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to reduce the amount of stitches that we have in this row now to start creating the shape of the cuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a double crochet, which is a US single crochet in this very first stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. We're then going to do a double crochet 2 together, which is a single crochet 2 together in US terms in these 2 stitches here. So we're going to insert the hook, yarn over, pull through, you'll have 2 loops on the hook, then go ahead and insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, you'll have 3 loops on the hook, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on that hook, and that takes those 2 stitches into 1 stitch. We're going to do this all the way across until we have 1 stitch remaining. So just be sure that when you're going into the next stitch, you're not accidentally going into where the leg of this stitch has gone into. We want to ignore that one because that's been used already. We go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. So as I say, you're going to work this all the way across until you have 1 stitch remaining. Just expect that you are going to start to pucker the fabric as we do this, which is exactly what we want. So just keep that in mind, but pause the video, work your way across until you have 1 stitch remaining, which will be this very first stitch here, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now you've worked your way across and you will have that puckering as I mentioned. We are going to do 1 double crochet, which is a US single crochet, into that very last stitch. Go ahead, turn the work. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lift up our loop and then pop in our 4.5mm hook, or your smaller hook that you are using. So now we're going to create the cuff section, which if I just show you the other side that I've already done here, this is what it's going to look like. So we're building our ribbing onto this section and we're going to be working in rows this way, attaching to this final row just here. So for the adult sizes, you're going to chain 11. If you are doing the children's sizes, you're either going to do 7 or 9. I'm going to go ahead and chain 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to end up with having 6 double crochets across here. If you're doing one of the larger children's sizes, you'll have 8, and if you're doing the adult sizes, you will have 10 stitches. So what we're going to do here is we're going to work into the second chain from the hook. The missed chains do not count as a stitch, and we're going to work a double crochet, which is a US single. So insert the hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 6. We're then going to do the join as you go method. So we're actually going to bring the edge of these stitches down to the final row. So we're going to ignore this very first stitch because that's what this one is connected to. Imagine that line of ribbing is associated with this stitch just here. We're going to slip stitch into the next stitch following that, and then slip stitch into the stitch following that one too. So we have 2 slip stitches. I'm just going to turn my work. And what we're going to do now is we're going to ignore those 2 slip stitches. So 1, 2, this is our first double crochet. And we're going to work into the back loop only of that stitch. And we're going to do a double crochet, US single crochet. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I have 6 stitches, you may have 8 stitches or 10 stitches. We're then going to chain 1 and turn, and we'll work back down, and we're going to work into the back loop only. So ignore this chain 1, that does not count as a stitch. And I'm doing 6 stitches, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're then going to work our slip stitches. So remember, we're not working into this one here, which already has a stitch that's already been taken. We're going to slip stitch into that next stitch, which pulls that row down, and then slip stitch into the next stitch and turn our work. And we're just going to repeat this all the way across. So we skip those 2 slip stitches, 1, 2, and then we work our double crochets, US single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chain 1, turn the work, skip that chain 1, and then work your UK doubles, US singles down. That's 3, 4, 5 and 6. And then remember, not working into this stitch, that one's already taken. So we'll go into the next stitch with a slip stitch and the next stitch with a slip stitch. And you'll repeat that all the way across until the end. So go ahead, pause the video, rewind if you need to. So repeat in row 2 and 3 of the ribbing, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now once you've done your ribbing, you're going to go ahead and fasten off. Pull out your hook, and then you're going to work on your second side. So when you come to do the other sleeve, you're going to do the exact same process in counting your stitches. But of course, because this is the foundation chain, it's just going to feel slightly different when you do it. Although we did work into the back bump, so you are going to work into the tops of the stitches, you just might feel a tiny bit more resistance when you're working into those stitches. So just bear that in mind when you're doing the opposite sleeve. But you also want to make sure that you're doing the same thing by thinking which way this was worked, which, because this is the foundation chain and the tail end is here, this row was worked this way, so now we're going to work back this way. So just to give a little bit of consistency with the stitches, although it is going to look a tiny bit different working it this way because these are the bottoms of the stitches and we're working the opposite direction, but it's not really very noticeable at all. So go ahead and work your second sleeve and cuff and meet me back once you're ready. So now that you have done both arms, you now have one large piece. So you have your back here, you have your front, your neckline, and your 2 arms. So you want to go ahead and block this so that it's all laying nice and neat. You might want to give it a tiny bit of a stretch, but block it to size. And then once you have done that and it's nice and dry, you can meet me back for your seaming. So at this point, we're ready to seam our work. You want to fold at your neckline so that the arms are folded in half each side, and then the fronts are in line with the back section. So if I just turn my work this way and line up the stitches from the front and the back, we're going to go ahead and take a piece of yarn. Now for this, I like to do around 3 times the length of the piece that I'm working on. So I'm actually going to do a length for the whole of this because this is a smaller size. But if you're doing one of the larger sizes, the adult sizes, you might just want to get enough for the edge first. So do 3 times the length and then get some more for the arm, just so that you're not dealing with too much yarn at the same time. Otherwise the yarn can split as you're working and it just becomes a bit of a tangle. So thread up your darning needle and you want to go ahead and find the very first stitch, the top of the first stitch down here, and then also the top of the first stitch on the back, and then you're going to come through. You might just want to do a second pass through that very first one. But we're just going to be using whip stitch for this. So you're going to go into the next stitch and the corresponding stitch on the other side. So working through both thicknesses, just gently pulling through your yarn. And then onto the next stitch, all the way up until you get to the arm, the underarm. So just keep pulling through and work your way up. So go ahead, pause the video, work your way up till you get to the arm, because it will be slightly different when we work on the arm because we're working into the edges of the stitch. So work all the way up to here and then meet me back once you're ready. So now you've got to the arm section, you can add a new piece of yarn if you need to. But we're now going to be working down the edges of the stitches. So you just want to be working maybe around 2 stitches per row. Just make sure you're doing it evenly across and take your time with it, because you really want to make sure that this seam is secure. You don't want to be kind of rushing this part and ending up with holes in your sleeve. So as a general rule, around 2 stitches per row, but just as long as you're working it evenly and working into the posts of the stitches. I tend to work through the stitch rather than like in between the gaps, like in between the hole of the stitch. Just because sometimes if you're working around the actual stitch itself, it can just make the seam a little bit bulky. So continue to work that all the way across, and then join me back when you get to the cuff section and I'll show you how we're going to work through there. So now you're at the ribbing, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the back loop of the side closest to you, and then the other side is the underside of the foundation chain. So I'm just going to work through there. So back loop, underside of the chain, and just work your way across. So back loop, underside of the chain, back loop, underside of the chain, and then this last one, just make sure that we're going as far into the end as possible. You might want to go through that one twice just to make sure it's extra secure, and then you can go ahead and fasten off with a knot, and then you can go ahead and sew in those ends. You're going to repeat that on the other side, and then we're going to flip the work around so that the seam is on the inside, and then we'll be able to work on the bottom ribbing and the front ribbing. So go ahead, repeat that on the other side, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now you've done all of your seaming, you want to turn your work so that the seams are on the inside. And what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the work round so that we can work on the bottom ribbing. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create our setup row, and then we're going to add the join as you go ribbing to this. Just to mention as well, I have sewn in all my ends at this point. Any ends that I had, I've sewn in so that I don't have to worry about them at the very end. We're going to take our larger hook, so this is the 5mm crochet hook, and we're going to join on the bottom corner just here as the work is facing us. Go into that very first stitch and join with a slip stitch and chain 1. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And what we're going to do here is we're going to work 2 double crochets in each row end, because we are working on the row ends. So we have our first row here, this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So I will do a double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US in there, and then go into that row end again. Then we have our next row. I'm going to go into that first part and then into the second, and then the next row, and you're going to work this all the way across. So 2 double crochets, which is US single crochets in each row end, all the way across with your 5mm hook. When you get to the seam, you're just going to skip over that seam, so you're going to work into that row end and then work into the next row end, so we're not actually working into the seam itself. So go ahead, work all the way across to the other side. Ensure that your very last stitch is right in the corner of this last row, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now you've worked your way across, we're going to turn our work. And we're going to change our crochet hook for a small hook. So mine is the 4.5mm. And the ribbing for the bottom ribbing is going to be the same as your cuff. So in my case, I'm going to chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It may be 9 if you're doing one of the larger children's sizes, or 11 if you're doing any of the adult sizes. And we're going to double crochet into the back bump of the chain this time. So the reason why we're working into the back bump here is because we're actually going to be working into these chains shortly. So into the back bump of the second chain from the hook, and working a double crochet, which is US single crochet. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I now have my 6 stitches as I had before, and then we're just going to do exactly the same with the ribbing all the way across. So we're going to ignore this first stitch because that one's already taken with this row, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch and into the next stitch. Turn the work, and then working into the back loop only, we're going to skip those 2 slip stitches and work 6, 8 or 10 stitches depending on your size all the way across. So this is 5 and 6 for me. Chain 1, turn the work, and then work those stitches back. So you're going to repeat row 2 and 3. So this is row 3. I'm going to work my way down. And then I'm going to slip stitch, and then you would turn. So rewind the video if you need to, but work your join as you go, ribbing all the way across until you get to the very end, and then meet me back once you're ready. So you've now completed your bottom ribbing, which should look like this. What we're going to do now is do the front opening. So we're going to go from the base of the cardigan all the way up to the neckline and across the neckline and down. We're going to start off with our setup row first of all, and then move on to the ribbing itself. So with your 5mm crochet hook, so your larger size hook, you're going to insert that into the first stitch of the ribbing, and you're going to slip stitch and chain 1. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and you're going to go ahead and do 1 double crochet in each of those stitches of the ribbing. So we've got 3, 4, 5, and that's 6 for me. You may have 8 or 10. Then we have the row, so the setup row from this ribbing. So you're going to go into the side of the work here and work a double crochet. Obviously that's a US single crochet. And then we have the tops of the stitches working all the way up this first side. So go ahead, work 1 double crochet, which is a US single crochet in each stitch, all the way up to the neckline. Meet me back, I'll show you how we're going to work around this neckline and then work around the opposite side. So I've now worked all the way up the edge of my opening, and now I've met myself at the neck. So for the neck, we're just going to work 2 double crochets, US single crochets, into each row end. So I'm just going to go straight into that row end with 2 double crochets, and then the next row end, 2 double crochets, and then 1, 2, all the way across that neck opening, 1, 2, and then 1, 2. And now I'm met with the other side, so I'm just going to find that first stitch in that opposite side, which is just here. Do my double crochet, US single crochet in there, and in each stitch all the way down. So you're going to do the same thing on this side as the other side. As you get to this join, you're going to work in each of your stitches and then into the edge of the row of the setup row, so the double crochet row, each stitch of your ribbing, and then meet me back once you're ready. So now you've worked your setup row all the way around, we're going to go ahead and change hooks to the smaller size, so mine is the 4.5mm. And what you're going to do is chain 5 for any of the children's sizes or 6 for any of the adult sizes. So that's yarn over, pull through, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. You're going to turn your work and you're going to work into the back bumps again, just so that we're keeping this edge nice and neat. You're going to work into the second chain from the hook, and then you're going to work 1 double crochet, which is US single crochet, into each chain. So for the children's sizes you will have 4, and then for the adult sizes you will have 5. And this method is going to be exactly the same for all of the other ribbing that we have done in this cardigan. So you'll work your first one, you'll skip that first stitch, and then you'll work your 2 slip stitches, turn the work, and then work 1 stitch, which is a double crochet, US single crochet, in the back loop of each stitch across. Chain 1, turn the work, and then work 1 double crochet, US single crochet into each stitch all the way across. Miss that stitch that we've already worked into and work 2 slip stitches. So you're going to do that all the way around the front opening. Pause the video and then meet me back once you've finished. Okay, so once you've worked your way around, you can go ahead and fasten off, and you can go ahead and sew in any ends that you might need to sew in. And what we're going to do now is create the pockets. So once you've finished all of your ribbing, it's now time to move on to doing the pockets. So you can use your swatch that you did at the beginning for the first section if you had followed the instructions to do that, or they were the right size to do that. Some of the smaller sizes for the children's are just a bit too small for a swatch, so but this size is okay. So you want to do the right amount of stitches and rows for your pocket, and then I'm just going to show you how you're going to add your ribbing. And this is going to be the same methods as we've done before. So I have just done 8 rows for my pocket for this size, and I'm going to go ahead and do 1 double crochet all the way across for the setup row. Obviously that's US single crochet, and I'm still using the 5mm crochet hook here, which is the larger hook of the 2. And then we're going to switch to the smaller hook to do the ribbing, and then your ribbing for the pocket is going to match the same size as the ribbing of the front opening. So if I go ahead and turn my work here, or change my hook should I say, and then I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then just do my ribbing as I've done before and as you've done before. So double crochet into the back bump of the second chain, and then I'm just going to work 4 UK doubles, which are US singles into each stitch. Remembering you're missing that first one, and then you're going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches, turn the work, and working into the back loop only, you're going to do the same amount of stitches. So for me, that's 4, 2, 3, and 4, chain 1, turn your work, and then work the same amount of stitches again. 3 and 4. Miss the stitch that you've been working into already, and then work 2 slip stitches. So you'll work that all the way across. Now what I like to do is leave a long tail end for sewing after I've done my pocket. So go ahead, make your 2 pockets, or finish off your swatch and make the other pocket, and then we'll go ahead and sew it onto the work. Okay, so when it comes to sewing on your pockets, I would suggest that you block them both before adding them to your work, just so you can make sure that they're the same size, and it also just pulls out these edges a little bit and just makes it really nice and neat and tidy. I haven't, just for filming purposes, but I would recommend that you go ahead and do that. But what I do is I like to line this up with certain areas, so I'm just going to use this first set of stitches here as reference, and then also use about half the row, half of this row for reference, and you're just going to whip stitch this on. So you want to go through the back of the work and then the pocket, and slowly pick up your stitch and stitch on the back, and also this stitch on the pocket, and work through each stitch all the way round, just gently whip stitching it into place. So again, taking your time with this and making sure that it's nice and straight. You can pin this into place if you wish. It's totally up to you. But you want to work your way all the way around your pocket, and then also add your other pocket. So once you've added your pockets, you are all done. Just make sure all of your ends are sewn in, and congratulations, your Nova cardigan is complete. Now if you make this, don't forget to tag me so that I can see. I would absolutely love to see your makes. And if you liked making this project, then I think you might also like this one too.